You guys don't realize that freight train is coming right for you, and that change is going to come back and hit you right between the eyes, and you're not even going to realize it. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot of news that is happening these days. We hear it all the time about central bank digital currencies, and they get a bad rap. But as we go through time, we got to figure out, what is this? Now, number one, it is the largest change to the way that you use money that you will have ever seen in your entire lifetime, and it is going to affect you whether you realize it or not. For me, I just think it's very important for you to be ahead of that curve. We're going to be talking into today how the banking industry is organized, how they are implementing changes that is going to change every aspect of your life. And you know that my favorite topic is real estate involved, and how real estate could change forever. We want to go through how these processes are going to be implemented and how you can protect yourself. So let's do a deep dive into this. You guys, we've put in a lot of hours preparing all this for you today. So hopefully that you will stay and listen to it all. But what I really, really want from you is for you to tell me what your opinions are at the end. Think about it and leave me a comment. I want to know what you guys are actually thinking about, how you are going about this. So with no further ado, let's jump straight into one of the articles. Now, everything that you know of in your life is going to come back to money. I know it sounds crazy, right? But everything always does. There's always something, one answer to do with money. And so there is a bank that nobody knows about. Everybody in their own country knows Bank of America, or they know some Bank of Montreal in Canada, or whatever it is. But there's a bank for international settlements with nobody knows what this is. So the Bank of International Settlements is in Switzerland, an international financial institution which is owned by other central banks, so different countries, and it serves as a bank for central banks. If you guys think banks control the world, imagine one bank to rule the world. This sounds very much like Dr. Evil in the Austin Power movies, honestly, right? So this is the Bank for International Settlements. Now, it provides banking services, but only to central banks and other international organizations. It is very hard, first of all, for you to even find out what international organizations that they actually work with. They don't want to publish that stuff. But we do know that they do banking for very specific people. Please know that when this bank was opened interwar, JP Morgan, you might see that name. A lot of Americans know that name, one of the largest banks in the world. Notice that the Bank of International Settlements' original role was to facilitate reparations imposed on Italy by the Treaty of Versailles in World War I. So when Germany had invaded, caused the war, and so they punished them and fined them billions of dollars, which is what caused the massive Weimar Republic overprinting inflation problems that you may have heard about, which led to World War II. And so remember that their very first original role was how to enforce massive reparations, or massive pressure on a country to get money out of them. Remember, always follow the money. If I could leave you with any tip whatsoever, it's follow the money. That's all that I want you to remember the entire way through this, okay? Follow the cash. So if you look at this, their original charter, okay, their original charter, shares in the bank could be held by individuals and non-governmental entities. So you have to think to yourself, this charter, if you're reading it, okay, who are the people that own the shares? I don't think that it's possible for us to find out that. Also, they enjoy immunities. My goodness, so they can't even get in trouble if they do something dodgy. What's up with that? They want to foster cooperation between central banks. After World War II, they were also following the money. They did operations that were helpful to the Germans. A lot of bad problems that they did during that course. So they wanted to get rid of it for years. Absolutely. You guys may have heard of the Bretton Woods Agreement after the Second World War. Bretton Woods. So the Bank of International Settlements, it says, is the world's oldest bank or financial institution. Notice this, no jurisdiction. They have no jurisdiction, the Swiss government, over their premises. Both the Bank of International Settlements and his employees are exempt from taxes. Oh my God, what a good deal these guys got. Also, their assets are immune from all jurisdictions under Swiss law. That is, they cannot be seized. My God, I just want you to take a moment and step back for here. What kind of contract did these guys get where you cannot come in my building against all international law? I could do whatever I want. Again, no laws apply to me. I will not pay taxes ever, and your assets will never be seized in any way. And I won't know who actually owns the bank. Is this some kind of joke? Honestly, like the more you go down this rabbit hole, the more you're going to be a little bit upset with it. Now, the Bretton Woods system, it actually went down when they went off the gold system in 1971. And it says after that, when gold did not play any part of money, the Bank of International Settlements role became even more prominent. And it's one place, this one bank offers a framework for discussion and decision making among the central banks. Notice it's telling the other central banks what to do. One bank, one bank. This comes back to the biggest problem that I have is when you have a centralizing power, it can become dodgy. It becomes dodgy. So remember, way back in the day, this was an American dollar, $1. I show this on my live sometimes. This American dollar has a blue star on it. The blue star also says at the very top, silver certificate. And at the bottom, it says $1 exchangeable for $1, one whole silver. Okay. 1 ounce. But when the new bills came out after 1971, now it just says a reserve note. It doesn't say redeemable for silver anymore. In the old days, you could get $1 for one piece of silver. Now it takes $40 to get a piece of silver. So it really depends, right? Now they're able to print as much money as they want. They no longer are tied to something of intrinsic value. So now they have to depend on one bank's opinion on how to run the world. Now that you know how important this bank is, don't we think that the next logical step should be, what are they saying? What is the direction that they say? And all this stuff that I told you about, how are things going to change for me and you in life moving forward? When I think of this, that there have no repercussions, they're immune for everything, no taxes on anybody, I can't help but think a little bit like these secret societies in some kind of a room, old days or something, because we don't know who they are. They're not elected officials. How do these unelected people become and rule the world out of one big fancy room? So if you just go to the Bank of International Settlements, their own website, this isn't opinion pieces. We don't want to ever be political on this channel. We want to be as factual as possible. So let's just take a look at the International Bank of Settlements actual website and take this look. So Project Rosalind. Now I'm all of a sudden thinking everything is evil these days, but let's take a look at that. Okay. So if we go to Project Rosalind here and take a look, it's talking about retail CBDC systems. If you take a look at that retail CBDC ecosystem, they're talking about it. It's an experiment exploring application programming interfaces, or APIs. A lot of our tech people might understand APIs, for a retail central bank digital currency. They are looking into this much farther than just looking into it. They are implementing it. The project is exploring how central banks could address the need for a universal API layer for retail CBDC payments, a universal one for everybody. One bank program to rule them all. That's a little bit weird, right? They want to see, including how the API might allow the ecosystem to share user and payment data. Just think about that for 1 second, please. Please just think about that. If you are going to buy anything on the planet for yourself, a home or a stick of gum, there's going to be that data that has to be shared. So the argument that I hear all the time is, well, David, if you have nothing to hide, then why should you care? I still don't like that very much, that they are looking at how they could share user data and payments data to one bank to run the entire world. That's a little creepy. All right, another page on the Bank of International Monetary Funds page, right here, Bank of International Settlement, BIS page. You can look this innovation and future of the monetary system. This was on the 22nd of February, and this is the general manager of the bank, and often with the goal to rethink how we use money. More generally, central banks have a duty to keep up with technological change, and they're talking about bank economies, and we need a vision for the future monetary system to evolve with their needs. He says a unified programmable ledger. Please note that there is a lot of bad press these days that is going on, talking about how central bank digital currencies are bad. There's a lot of bad press about it. So they don't want to call it a central bank digital currency anymore. They don't want to say those words because those words could be triggering for some people. But if you notice what they're talking about, a unified programmable ledger, that is a central bank digital currency. That's what that is. So let's take that back for 1 second, okay? There was a movie way back in the 80s called a $20 Bill. And in that movie, what it did is it took a regular bill and followed the life cycle of that bill, okay? That's what it did. So if we take a look at this bill, do you notice that on it there's a serial number, yeah? So imagine this serial number. We could actually type that serial number into a computer and find out that David had it. Then I took this exact same bill and I sent this bill and I paid gas for it. Then that gas station took it and paid the gum supplier with it. That guy took it and paid his mortgage with it. That guy went and took it and bought milk with it. And it could tell you the entire history of the bill every single time it was purchased forever. Okay. You would say, well, that's cool and creepy at the same time. But what they're proposing with a national central bank digital currency is that every single unit that is ever used is tracked every single time it is moved, every penny. Now, of course, they're going to say that this is to make sure that people aren't doing crime and they're paying taxes. It's always going to come across that way. But we have to do a trade-off somewhere here. There has to be a trade. What is the trade? The trade is every time that you go to buy something, you're essentially calling the government and saying, hey, it's David, can I buy milk today? Hey, it's David, can I buy beef today? Because inside of the system, there's a program running saying you're only allowed to buy this or that or this or that, whatever it may be. Now, this is not against one government, guys. This is not against one country. The majority of the world we're going to go look at is heading down this road. And every single government in every single country that's going to have this is going to have their own agenda. So they're going to have a new list of things that you can buy and cannot buy. And that's going to change over and over again. But then it comes back to the idea, why are we not free to be able to buy what we want? And that's the slippery slope that we're on once we go down that road. And, you know, it's very, very hard to put the genie back in the bottle if that continues. So he's talking about this central bank unified programmable ledger. So it's not just a unified ledger where every bank was going to see what every single person buys in dollar form, but it's going to be programmable. Please understand what that means, that they can put contingencies on your money. Let's go down a little bit farther. CBDCs, for example, will play the role that the central bank money plays today. Tokenized deposits will play the role of commercial bank property, tokenizing all of their profits. That's what Bitcoin and so forth is. Notice on the Bank of International Settlements, using smart contract, please note on the backs of every single Ethereum coin, it talks about smart contracts. I don't know if you guys could see on the back of an Ethereum, it'll say smart contracts on it. Smart contracts are, there's a contingency to make it happen. If you have $1 and let's just say that you needed to buy, I don't know, say you were going to buy a bottle of alcohol and you wanted to go buy a bottle of alcohol. And when you went to ding dong, buy it, the system says you've already had one this week. You're not allowed anymore. Okay. So it has a condition on the money that it will only let you have a limit of what you want. For example, it's just one example, but this is not an opinion piece. This is the Bank of International Settlements webpage. They're talking about smart contracts based off of Ethereum. The escrow process, so he's talking about homes, could be automated by locking their funds into the buyer's account. Once the escrow process is concluded, the smart contract transfers the money to the seller automatically. Instant settlement achieved by digital central bank money by relying on the institutional structure. Notice we're going to come back to that structure in a second. It's a trusted asset, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So let's continue on. I want you guys to understand this. So the central bank digital currency wants to have these digital dollars and digital assets. So your dollars will no longer be dollars. They're going to be programmable coins. Also assets, all your stocks, all your homes, everything else to be digital. That's the dodgy part of this. He was upbeat about blockchain features. This is the general manager up here, Austin Carstens, the general manager of the Bank of International Settlements, one of the most powerful men in the world that nobody has ever heard about. He's excited about the blockchain features of smart contracts in this article. Remember down here, this is the smart contracts, Ethereum coins. So he's excited about it. Of course he is. It's more control. Now, you guys, I'm not a tinfoil hatter. Please just go look on the Bank of International Settlements website yourself. Programmability, notice that's the first word, do not require decentralization or permissionless platforms, meaning it does not need Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything else anymore. They want to do it themselves. All the potential benefits I just outlined can be achieved in a permissioned platform. Permissioned meaning centralization and control with various degrees of centralization, meaning one bank to rule the world. I mean, you guys, you have to be able to see that, man. So he was giving the example of a house, and you guys know that I'm a real estate agent and a broker. But this, this house example, well, let's look into it. I think it's a very smart idea in that case. Now, let's just pause there for one moment. Do you think you guys don't realize that freight train is coming right for you, and that change is going to come back and hit you right between the eyes, and you're not even going to realize it for a second that this is crazy? And I know that a lot of people think you're a tinfoil hatter. It's crazy or crazy talk. This is never going to happen. You guys don't realize that freight train is coming right for you, and that change is going to come back and hit you right between the eyes, and you're not even going to realize it. Okay, so let's just dive into that. If we go over to the atlanticcouncil.org, it's a CBDC tracker, and it's tracking how many different countries of the world right now are getting hammered by central bank digital currencies. If we can look, there's 11 projects that are launched, 18 projects are now in pilot, 32 are in development. If we go down and take a look at the planet, right now, either launch, pilot, or in development phase, we're now looking at over 50%, 56% of the world. But that's percentage-wise a lot higher if we're looking at it as a percentage of the GDP. So this is coming. And if we look at the Bank of Canada, I want you to go to the Bank of Canada where I live. Notice for immediate release on May 8th, not too long ago, Bank of Canada launches public consultations on a digital dollar. Did you hear this in the news? Did you see it on any mainstream news anywhere is my question. I bet you that you didn't, because the Bank of Canada wants to do this very, very quietly. And it says as the world becomes increasingly digital, the bank, like many others, are exploring a digital version of Canada's national currency, to which a lot of people are going to say, well, David, everything I do today is digital anyway. I put the money in the bank, my paycheck goes into the bank, and it's a digital number, and I pay my bills digitally. Maybe not much is going to change. The difference is what is going to happen with the permissions that you have to put on things. That's the crazy part that's going to change. So that's Canada. Public consultations on the digital dollar just happened last month. Okay, let's move forward than that. What's the next one? In the United States, the big kahuna, the Fed Now program, Fed Now is just starting up starting July. So when they talk about Fed Now is not a central bank digital currency. Notice if you go to the Atlantic Council website, where are they right now? They're in development, okay? They're in development. They have not lost the payment rails yet. They haven't started it yet. But do you see here it says where a wholesale CBDC would be for interbank settlement, Fed Now would also be restricted to financial institutions. However, the difference lies in their design. Where a CBDC would be a currency, Fed Now is the payment rail. It's the plumbing. So that if we happen to want a digital currency, the plumbing is all there. Imagine installing all the pipes in your house, but no water is ever let out of those taps. The moment that you open the tap, the water is going to be there because all the work has been done. The hard part is the payment rails, and that's what's starting in the United States in a couple weeks. So you guys, this is coming. Whether you like it or not, this is coming. And remember, this is not to be political. So a lot of people will tell me that, David, this is crazy. I think it's bananas. But let me share something with you that is a little bit about my family history. Do you see this piece of paper? My father passed away 5 years ago, and I found this in his wallet. And I had no idea what this is. So I had to talk to some of my German friends, and I had to translate this on the back. So if you notice on the back, it says we can understand December 1920 on the December 31st, 1920 on it. So what this was is every single valley in 1920 in Germany, they were broke. If you remember, the Bank of International Settlements was putting huge reparations on Germany, and they were dead broke and had no cash. So the individual towns invented their own currency. They invented their own currency. Each little town of 100 people invented their own currency, okay? Number one, invented. Number two, there was a date on it that the money expired on that date, December 31st, 1920. If it passed that date, the money, poof, disappeared. Number three, this money could only be used in this city, nowhere else, and it could only be used to pay taxes or buy the things that the city said that you can buy. This is in 1920. This is now 100 years ago. They invented a piece of money. I have to repeat this. They invented a piece of money. They made it expire on a certain date. They told you where you could spend it and what you could spend it on. Please note that history is repeating itself almost exactly. The Bank of International Settlements and all the governments of the world are inventing a new type of currency. And that currency, though it may still be called the US dollar or the Canadian dollar, you're not going to notice the difference. You're going to wake up the next morning and the money in your bank account will have been switched and you're not even going to realize it. So now it's going to be called something different, something the same, but it's a kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing a little bit. But now they have the capability. Will they turn it on or not? That depends on the government. But they're also going to be able to tell you where you can spend it, what city. They're going to be able to tell you the date that your money can expire on. You're not allowed just to keep it forever. And they can tell you what you can purchase. So it depends on what government. Again, this is not political. There are certain governments today that will say you're not allowed to drive more than 15 minutes from your home. You cannot eat too much meat. You can't buy so much gas. You cannot, whatever the flavor of the month is or whatever the country is that day. And sure, as the sun will rise, there's going to be a new government and he's going to say something else. We don't want you to eat carrots. I don't know, whatever it is. They're going to have that control and the capability of doing that. This comes down to a little bit of a dangerous premise to me. And just hear me out, okay? This is going to trigger some people. I already know it's going to. But if you go and take a look at this, okay, I want you just to go to Investopedia, okay? A lot of people trust Investopedia, so that's why I want to use it. I don't want to use any type of opinion piece anywhere. Just go to Investopedia and write in Marxism. When you type in Marxism, it just says that it's an economic and political theory that examines the flaws with capitalism, alternative, which they call a utopian socialism, okay? So socialist, meaning everybody pretty much is going to make the same amount of money, kind of like a UBI. But the thing that I think that is important here is it wants shared ownership by workers for the means of production, okay? Shared ownership of all the companies. And it says the government owns and controls the production and distribution of all goods and services, okay? The government owns all means of production and all goods and services, period. So when you hear that one political, let's not call it Marxism, let's just call it, this school of thought of utopian socialism, where they're going to tax companies out of existence and own all the goods, it kind of feeds into a lot, right? Where the World Economic Forum famously is saying you'll own nothing and be very happy, where the government is going to own all of that stuff. Now, will that happen immediately? Guys, let's not jump off a cliff. It's not going to happen in 2 days. It's never going to happen in 2 days. What generally happens if we look through history is there's going to be a moment, a crisis moment, where they're going to come in riding on their white horses and say, we have the solution. This has happened for thousands of years, okay? Over and over and over again. It's kind of like one of those movies that you're like, I've never seen this movie, but I kind of do, like a Hallmark special or something. It's always the same theme. So we're going to have some kind of economic crisis and you're going to see everyone rush to this and say, this is the answer. And they're going to go back to that. And for sure, it's going to happen. Come on. And it just makes sense that it's going to happen. Don't be too afraid of it. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. I just want you guys to be careful with that. Now, currently in the United States, it's illegal for the central bank to do business with individuals, okay? It's illegal for that temporarily. Now, they could always change the law with that. And what will they temporarily will probably have a system where cash will be good with the digital dollar at the same time. But ultimately, it's going to happen whether you like it or not. Now, are there pros to this system and are there cons to the system? Absolutely, there's pros and cons to the system. I'm going to show you one example. I'm going to show you myself, what I do for a living. Now, you guys know that I'm a real estate agent, right? I'll just explain it to you. But there is one central bank digital currency, one bank, let's show you here, one bank of international settlements. They kind of funnel the news down to other central banks, the ones that you're going to hear about on the news. Those central banks, Bank of Canada or the Federal Reserve or whatever, they pass their information down to the World Economic Forum and Club of Rome. And then it's kind of funneled out to all these other countries and all these other organizations to the lower levels. But all of the information is coming from the top, from the Bank of International Settlements. My thing to you is, if you have a question and your question is on anything, don't talk to your local government or then your provincial government and then your federal government and then the central bank and then the World Economic Forum and then the Bank of International Settlements way up there. Why don't we go straight to the source? Did you play that game when you were a kid where you're sitting in a big ring and you're whispering something into one kid's ear, and then the next year they called it broken telephone? And by the time that sentence got around the circle, everything is all garbled. So I'm just saying to you, if you want to avoid all the garble of all the mainstream media, just go straight to the top, straight up. Get the word right from them. The World Economic Forum, actually, the Klaus Schwab guy, he actually wrote a lot of books. So I think that you should actually read those books to try to get some good information from them. But the Bank of International Settlements, they put out some press releases, but they don't have a lot of books being written. Some of the guys in the most high power places are not the ones that are actually going to be putting out that information. Now, what are some of the benefits that you can have from a place like this? Well, I told you that I'm a real estate broker myself. So let's take a look at this right here. Let's just say that we had a $1 million property over here. You have a buyer and a seller for this property, right? A buyer and a seller, like every single time that there's a home purchase, a buyer and a seller. So when the buyer actually is going to go buy, he needs to have a real estate agent, a mortgage broker, there's a bank involved, and there's a lawyer, okay? And the seller also has a real estate agent, a mortgage broker, a bank, and a lawyer. And we're not even talking about all of the different systems that are in place to register your property, to register the liens on your property and register the mortgages. It's a huge beast. That's why it's so expensive to be selling your home. You need a lot of people and a lot of expertise to do it. You don't want to risk selling the largest asset of your life without having a lot of people with a lot of skills. And, that's what we do in the Greater Toronto area. If you ever want help from us in the Greater Toronto area, you can go to sellhigher.ca. But imagine now what they were talking about at the Bank of International Settlements is you no longer need any of these 8 people right here. All of those 8 jobs, bank, and the buyer can directly send his cash over to the seller, and the seller now can send the deed up to the buyer, and it'll all be controlled by one agency, one computer at the central bank in the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland. One program to rule them all. It's like a worldwide Bitcoin thing, right? He called it a programmable unified ledger. So they don't want to call it a central bank digital currency anymore. Kind of has a bad stigma to it. So a unified programmable ledger. That's what the exact same thing is. So kudos to the marketing department. Honestly, I think that was pretty good, pretty good lingo, I think. Here is the thing. So what could we do about that? Well, number one, in the United States, it's illegal for them to actually work with the central bank cannot work with the actual citizens. So that law is very important for you to uphold. You want to be able to have banks around that you can have relationships with them. So I think that would be a nerve if they ever tried to do that. Also, you have to have some things of value in your life. So when we were looking at a dollar before, remember that $1 in the old days, 100 years ago, was tied to a silver dollar, one silver dollar. Yeah. So one silver dollar, one silver dollar. After they lost that pin, that they didn't hold it to that, then they just started calling it a Federal Reserve note, right? But then you have to actually go. And if you read what he had said when we were talking, the general manager of the Bank of International Settlements, he said, we are the guardians of the trust of money, not meaning real money. We are the guardians of the trust in the currency that actually has no value to it anymore. It's just a piece of paper. And so the only reason that this piece of paper is worth money and this piece of paper is not, you would say it's because it says copy on it. There's still just 2 pieces of paper. An alien coming from outer space would come down and say, they're just 2 pieces of paper. Why is this worth more than this? This is why this is just a note. It is no longer called money. It's just currency. Big difference. And so I often show people, what it was like for the Reserve Bank in Zimbabwe, also high money printing. $1 billion would not buy you a cup of coffee back in the day. Please know, again, to reiterate, we used to have central bank digital currency 100 years ago, but it wasn't from a central bank. This was from a local town, but they had the same rules and regulations around it. Now they're going to have an efficient way of doing it. But now there's a lot of welfare that is out there, and the welfare payments that go out, they're told you cannot have alcohol, you cannot have, I think it's lottery tickets or something like that. Okay, but they could program that in a computer. The same as they could say, David, you can't have any more Coca-Cola, or you can't have any more gas, or whatever it is. Imagine making that phone call every single time asking permission to buy something. So one of the main tenets of that government thing that we were looking at, I don't want to say the word, some people get mad at it, but they said no private property rights. They don't want you to own a home or a car, and they want the governments to own everything and to own all of the businesses, that the means of production. It's sure, if we look at it objectively and we don't look at things politically like ever, if you look at it objectively, they sure have a lot of similarities to it. Unfortunately, we've done this before and it didn't work. Many countries have done it before and it doesn't work. Fortunately, we live in a time where we have abilities to actually do things about it. So when we are looking at some of the comments on the side here, some people were mentioning, is gold and silver still a good idea about it? And the answer is absolutely yes. So you guys know that I'm a huge fan of gold and silver. Make sure, the case is broken on this one. Make sure you get a little bit of gold, a little bit of silver in your possession. Make sure that you have it in a safe place. I generally say put it in safety deposit boxes, or never keep it at your house, or you can have it housed overseas. Also, there are bank accounts that are out there that do not hold dollars, because when you go and open your bank account says you own 100 ounces of silver. It doesn't have a dollar value. It says how many ounces of silver you have in your account. So if you put cash in, it converts it instantaneously into metal. The moment that you need cash out, it sells some metal for you to get cash. So you're never sitting in it. If you want to understand the power of inflation, please study Lebanon, Argentina, and Venezuela. These amazing people are able to cope with 200, 300, 500% inflation. Unbelievable. Some friends in Venezuela, it was like 1,000% a month. So if you look at that, how are these people surviving? That's the question that you and I would ask, because we're saying 9% is bad. It's not bad compared to, but how are they doing better than we are at 200% inflation than we are at 9? It's because we are lazy and we're not doing what we should. Here's what they do. Every single morning, they get out of bed and they say, well, guys, let's now go to the market. We're going to find out and try to buy all of the items as low as possible. Let's just say a bunch of oranges or something. Then they're going to take it back to their shop and insist that they're going to sell their oranges for a higher price. Okay. And make sure that they have their profit period for that day, because the next day it's going to be a different price. They have to make sure they sell out of their stuff, and they're not going to go too heavy on oranges that day, because they're going to lose money if it sits over to the next day. Inflation is that bad. But try to take some of those lessons out and put them for our own self. Don't overextend yourself. Plan every single day to make smart moves, to save money. Negotiate your price down if you can. Try to always set your prices at a point where you're guaranteeing profits and taking some of the profits off the table. I'm going to tell you, if we were as smart as some of the people that were there, we would be just fine. So that's what I want you to do. Now, gold and silver is an amazing tool that I think you should do. Now, Bitcoin and Ethereum, everyone always asks me about crypto, because you guys know that I've been mining crypto since 2013. And so I continue to do so. But we're not going to put our whole bag into it. We're always going to be diversifying, always going to be buying more of it, but just little amounts. Like I always said, maybe 1%, 2%, or whatever of your savings into it, just a taste. The probability is, if we have central bank digital currencies, and we saw the map of how many central bank digital currencies there are, if we just refresh your memory a little bit, it's all over the place. Okay. It's like everywhere that these central bank digital currencies are coming into play. So in all of these places that are going to have a central bank digital currency, can we really sit back with any real honesty and say that the country will allow me and you to transact every day and not pay taxes on it? It's never going to happen. But in countries that don't have income tax, in countries that actually have a type of tax called usage tax, for example, like Cayman Islands or something like that, where instead of paying 13% VAT or HST, now you have to pay 25%, which people would go, my God, but you pay no income tax, zero. So now all of a sudden you make a lot more money, and now it kind of makes sense, right? It's based on usage. And so then you could save a lot of money. In those countries, Bitcoin and Ethereum should be very, very good, especially if their countries are unstable, high inflation, high money printing, and they call it quantitative easing. If that is the case, those coins will be very valuable, in my opinion. So just have a taste of it. You guys know that I like Bitcoin, and for sure, I really like Ethereum. So I really think that it's important that we have those things for sure. A lot of people don't actually see this coming, but it is happening whether we like it or not, right? And central bank digital currencies are going to play a role in our future, as we saw this. So if anyone else was on Facebook, or if you guys are on TikTok or Instagram, you can go to our YouTube. We have this all on our lives under Ruff Team Realty. So please, if you like any of the work that my team does in editing these videos and doing all of the research that we bring to you, hopefully we at least earned your subscription today, put a lot of time into this, and hopefully you're learning a lot together with me, and a better way for us to protect ourselves. Like everything in life, it is not all one thing. It's not all bad or all good. Remember that there are no solutions in life. There is just trade-offs. One of the best economists in the world, that's what they said. There are no solutions, there's just trade offs. Along with central bank digital currencies, which are coming hands down, even from the highest levels, there are going to be efficiencies. So if you are in types of accounting or real estate agents or mortgage brokers, it's all going to be changing. Now, it's going to take time for that all to be built, could be a decade, maybe more, who knows? But just think of what's happened since the iPhone has come around just in 16 years, and how the world has completely changed. It's going to have that monumental of an effect on the way that we do things, but some of it you might not even noticing happening. It really depends what country that you're in and how they are going to manage that digital currency. And remember, he says it has to be permissions on that unified ledger. So everybody will be able to see every single thing that you purchase, period. But there has to be permissions built into it. Remember what he was talking about, smart contracts. So that's what's going to happen. But you're always going to want to have some type of currency that's really, really strong. What type of currencies are the strongest in the world? Obviously, not the US dollar, Canadian dollar. They're printed into oblivion, and they're going to continue printing for as long as they possibly can. This is very, very typical. 100-year cycles go over and over. Some of the most stable currencies in the world are the Norwegian kroner, or the Singapore dollar, or the Swiss franc. Very, very strong currencies. Those are the type of currencies that you'd love to have. Most likely, the Singapore dollar, I think, would be the king of the pile. But you got to think about this. And even in my field, in real estate, we're changing every day. As AI has taken off in the past 6 months, we too have to implement a lot of AI stuff into our real estate portfolio. That's what we do here in the GTA. So if you're in the GTA, you can always reach out to us. We have to be willing to change. And a lot of these things are going to be coming back, but we can push back slightly on it by having some alternatives as well. That's why I always think that you should always firstly invest in yourself, in your emergency funds. Try to look at some of these bank accounts. You can open bank accounts in other countries, other savings vehicles in other countries, so you basically will never be shut off. You just have to make sure it's kind of like insurance for yourself. That's what I want everybody to do. Anyway, I hope that this provides a lot of help for you guys. Please give us a like and a follow, and I will be talking to you soon. I hope that you have a fantastic night. Talk to you soon.